Stand up and make some noise for every black woman who walks into a room and owns IT without asking for permission. For every queen who's been underestimated, overlooked, or told she didn't belong. This one's for you. Today's story, it's not just about respect. It's about a black... 1. Excuse me, can you read the sign? The automatic glass door slid open with a soft whoosh, and in walked Jordan Ellis, her presence calm but commanding. Tailored navy suit, crisp white blouse, a slim leather laptop bag hanging off one shoulder. Her heels clicked against the marble floor with each confident step. She didn't just walk into the building. She owned the space with her energy. Jordan was used to running high-stakes boardrooms, closing 8-figure deals, and making billion-dollar companies bend to her vision. But today wasn't about suits and handshakes. Today was personal. This company, a mid-sized tech firm in Chicago, had recently acquired one of Jordan's startups. And today, she decided to do what every hands-off CEO should do once in a while: show up unannounced. She wanted to see how things really worked behind the glossy website and polished press releases. But what she didn't expect was to be stopped cold before she could even make it 10 steps inside. Behind the reception desk sat a woman chewing gum like it owed her money. She was glued to her phone, barely glancing up until Jordan got close. Excuse me," the receptionist said, not looking thrilled to be interrupted. "Can you read the sign?" Jordan looked behind her. A simple plaque hung on the wall. Employees only beyond this point. She turned back and offered a polite smile. "Yes, I read it." "Well," the woman said with a loud sigh, as if Jordan had just made her miss a level in Candy Crush. "This entrance is for employees only. Deliveries through the back. You'll see a loading dock." Jordan blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "I'm not making a delivery," she said, keeping her tone calm. The receptionist squinted at her, then smirked. "Okay, then you're definitely lost. Visitors check in next door. This isn't the mall." Jordan raised an eyebrow. Interesting, she thought. Still smiling slightly, she replied, "I'm not a visitor either." The receptionist leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "Then what are you?" And there it was, that subtle mix of disbelief, condescension, and impatience. The receptionist didn't ask for her name, didn't check the appointment book, didn't scan the badge Jordan held in her hand. She had made a decision in less than 5 seconds. Jordan knew that look. She had faced it countless times over the years, on Wall Street, in Silicon Valley, in boardrooms, where she was the only black woman in a sea of suits. The same expression that said, "You don't belong here. You must be confused. You're not one of us." She wasn't offended. Not anymore. She was just disappointed. "I'm here to speak with your executive team," Jordan said evenly. "If you'd kindly let them know Jordan Ellis has arrived." The receptionist gave a short laugh, the kind you give when someone tells a joke you don't quite understand. "Nice try. Look, I don't care what your little badge says. No one gets in this way unless they work here, and you clearly don't." She emphasized you with a glance down at Jordan's brown skin and designer heels. Jordan's smile faded. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. It wasn't about a policy. It was about perception. The woman didn't see a CEO. She saw someone out of place, someone she could dismiss. Jordan stepped back, reached into her bag, and pulled out her phone. No panic, no frustration, just quiet, controlled purpose. She tapped once. A call connected. "Chris," she said, addressing the firm's VP of Operations. "I'm in your lobby, but apparently I don't work here." There was a pause on the other end, then a frantic voice. "You're what? I thought your flight wasn't until Friday." "Nope," Jordan said. Surprise. "I wanted to see how your team treats people who don't walk in wearing a name tag." The receptionist, suddenly curious, leaned forward. "Wait, who did you say you were?" But Jordan didn't answer. She simply held her phone out and hit speaker. Chris's voice rang out. "Tell her to sit down immediately. We're on our way down right now." That's when the receptionist's gum almost fell out of her mouth. Jordan put the phone back to her ear. "Take your time," she said, eyes never leaving the woman behind the desk. "I'm enjoying the view from here." Click. She tucked her phone away, folded her arms, and waited. The receptionist sat frozen, face flushed with embarrassment, silently begging the floor to open up beneath her. Jordan didn't smirk, didn't roll her eyes. She just stood there, completely calm, letting the silence speak louder than any argument ever could. Because this wasn't just about her. It was about every black professional who had ever been mistaken for a delivery person. Every woman who had been talked over, sized up, or told to wait outside, simply because they didn't look like the boss. Jordan wasn't going to argue. She didn't have to. Her presence was the argument. And in just a few more minutes, the whole company would feel the impact of this moment. 2. The assumption the receptionist stood up slowly, arms crossed, gum still popping between her teeth. Her expression was a mix of annoyance and disbelief. She scanned Jordan from head to toe, her gaze lingering just long enough to communicate her thoughts loud and clear. "You're not supposed to be here." "Ma'am," she said, with exaggerated patience, "I don't know who you think you are, but people can't just walk into this building, especially not through the main floor like this." Jordan remained composed. Her voice didn't waver. "And what exactly do you do?" she asked calmly. "When the person walking in owns it?" The receptionist let out a sharp laugh. "Yeah, okay. You own it. And I'm Beyoncé." A few employees standing nearby snickered. One man nudged his co-worker and muttered something under his breath, both of them chuckling like it was the funniest joke of the morning. The others didn't even look up. No one asked for clarification. No one stepped forward. They just watched, amused, dismissive, silent. Jordan could feel the temperature in the room, not physically, but socially. She'd walked into boardrooms, investment summits, and international conferences. She knew the vibe when people judged her before she even opened her mouth. And this was textbook. Let them talk. Let them laugh. She glanced at her watch. 10:03 a.m. tick-tock. Still on schedule. She pulled out her phone and calmly sent a message. "I'm here. 5 minutes." The receptionist tilted her head. "Seriously, who are you trying to meet here? Because if you're just trying to sneak in and pitch some idea or hand someone your resume, it's not going to happen." Jordan met her eyes directly. "I'm not here to pitch anyone. I'm here to make decisions." That statement hung in the air, but the receptionist didn't get it, couldn't get it, because everything about Jordan, her presence, her power, her quiet certainty, didn't fit the receptionist's limited image of what a CEO was supposed to look like. Black, female, stylish, young. Too many things that didn't match the profile. "You still haven't told me your name," the receptionist said, her tone growing sharper. "Because unless you're someone on the schedule, you need to step aside. You're holding up my front desk." Jordan gave her a soft smile. "You'll know my name in about 90 seconds. As if on cue, the elevator dinged. Out stepped a man in a tailored navy suit, flanked by 2 senior executives. He was moving fast, like someone in a hurry to fix a problem. His eyes locked onto Jordan the second he exited the elevator. "Ms. Ellis," he called out, clearly flustered. "I'm so sorry. We weren't expecting you until later." The room shifted. The laughter stopped. Heads turned. The receptionist's jaw dropped just slightly, her hands frozen over the keyboard. The man continued, "Please, come right this way. We've got the executive suite prepped, and your team's logging in remotely. We're ready for the presentation review whenever you are." He held out a hand. Jordan took it. Cool, smooth, professional. She glanced at the receptionist one last time. "I believe you were asking for my name?" The man spoke before she could. "This is Ms. Jordan Ellis," he said. "Founder, CEO, owner." Silence. You could hear the gum fall out of the receptionist's mouth. Jordan didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She didn't raise her voice or drop a mic. She just turned and followed the executive toward the elevator, her heels once again clicking across the tile floor, but this time with a different sound. The sound of realization. The sound of respect finally catching up to presence. Meanwhile, the receptionist stood frozen. She'd made an assumption based on how someone looked, just like so many others do. She didn't ask questions. She didn't consider that someone like Jordan could own the very space she was guarding. And now, she wasn't just embarrassed. She was exposed. The moment went viral before it even hit social media. A nearby intern had caught the entire interaction on camera, uploaded without edits, without commentary. Just the raw exchange. No filters, no excuses. And within hours, it would be trending. But we'll get to that later. Because in this building, on this day, something bigger was happening. Jordan wasn't here for revenge. She was here for change. And the next 8 minutes would show exactly what kind of leader she was. Because while the receptionist was stuck thinking she could judge people by their appearance, Jordan Ellis was busy rewriting the rules of the entire company. 3. A name they should have known. Jordan Ellis didn't need to shout. She didn't need to curse, clap back, or go viral. She let the silence do the heavy lifting. And in that moment, standing at the front desk of a company she owned, she reached calmly into her bag and pulled out a sleek, matte black badge. Gold lettering caught the light, just enough to draw attention, but not too much. Classy, direct, inevitable. She held it up like a mirror to the receptionist's face. It read, Jordan Ellis, Chief Executive Officer. Ellis Tech Holdings. The badge was real. The power was real. The stunned silence, also real. You could feel it, like a ripple spreading across still water. The receptionist's smirk dissolved, slow and awkward, like a snowman in the sun. Her shoulders dropped. The bravado drained from her eyes. Her lips parted just slightly, like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Jordan didn't gloat. She didn't flinch. She simply leaned in slightly, her voice low but crystal clear. I called this meeting 2 weeks ago, she said. Your department heads were copied on the calendar invite. Your operations lead confirmed the time, and your HR director promised the front desk would be notified. She paused for a beat, not because she needed to, but because she knew the impact of letting the weight of the moment settle. But clearly, she continued, not everyone here understands what leadership looks like. And that line cut through the air like a sword. It wasn't loud, but it hit hard. Behind her, the elevator dinged again. Jordan's assistant, a sharp-dressed young black woman with an iPad in one hand and a coffee in the other, walked in like she'd just stepped off a runway. Ms. Ellis, she said, with practiced cool. The boardroom's ready. Presentation is queued, conference link is live, and the full team's assembled. Jordan didn't even acknowledge the receptionist again. Didn't need to. No snarky look. No parting words. She just turned, heels clicking with unmistakable finality, and walked into the heart of the company she built. And that was the real power. Inside the executive floor, the energy shifted. Senior leaders stood to greet her. A few fumbled over themselves with apologies, clearly having just learned about the front desk incident via text. Ms. Ellis, I am so. She held up a hand. Let's get to work, she said. You can save the explanations. They won't fix the system. Because Jordan wasn't here for apologies. She was here for accountability. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on her. She'd spent her career building Ellis Tech Holdings from the ground up, an enterprise that had acquired this smaller tech firm just 2 months earlier. She had given this team time to adapt, to adjust to the new leadership structure, to do the right thing without being micromanaged. But what she walked into that morning, that wasn't a small mistake. That was a message about how deeply bias could infect even the most professional environments. She sat at the head of the table, her presence commanding without being loud, and opened her laptop. All right, she said, let's talk about the future of this company, starting with who gets to represent it. Several executives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. They should have. Meanwhile, downstairs, the receptionist was still standing in place. Her hands trembled slightly as she stared at the door Jordan had disappeared through. The laughter from earlier? Gone. The jokes? Dead in the air. Even the nearby employees who had chuckled before were now pretending to be deeply engaged in their spreadsheets. The receptionist fumbled for her phone, pulling up the employee directory in a panic. Jordan Ellis, Chief Executive Officer, founder, investor, visionary, and her boss, her boss's boss. Her hands hovered over her keyboard, unsure if she should send an apology email or pack her things. But it was too late for either. Back upstairs, Jordan laid it all out. She walked through the quarterly numbers, the strategic plan, and then came the unexpected part. She pulled up a slide titled, "The Culture Audit." "We're not just reviewing products or profit margins," she said. "We're reviewing people." A quiet tension filled the room. "I'm instituting a full culture audit across all levels of this company. Every interaction, every report, every pattern of exclusion or mistreatment will be documented. If you lead a department, expect to be interviewed. If you're managing people, expect your team to be surveyed. And if you've allowed discrimination to go unchecked..." She paused. "That stops today." No one spoke. No one dared. Jordan closed her laptop slowly. This company is no longer just about technology. It's about humanity. And if that's a problem for anyone at this table, let me know now. Because you won't be at the next one. Outside the boardroom, news had already spread. An interns group chat had the full story. Someone posted a vague tweet. "When the CEO walks in and the front desk tells her to get lost, phew. Whole building holding its breath right now." It got 4,000 retweets in 20 minutes. The narrative was writing itself. But Jordan? She wasn't chasing viral. She was building legacy. And this was only the beginning. Inside the boardroom, 15 executives sat in a room built to impress. Glass walls, a polished mahogany table, abstract art carefully curated to scream innovation. But today, none of that mattered. Because in the chair at the head of the table now sat Jordan Ellis. And she wasn't here for show. The door closed behind her with a solid click. Conversations died mid-sentence. Some of the execs had stood in half-hearted attempts at respect. Others stayed seated, their eyes wide as if they were trying to process what they'd just seen outside. The CEO being mistaken for a delivery person and dismissed like she didn't belong in her own company. Jordan didn't bother acknowledging the awkward tension. She dropped her leather briefcase onto the table and slowly took her seat. The silence was thick. Then she spoke, low, steady, with the kind of quiet command that made people straighten up in their chairs without realizing it. "Let's get something straight." She scanned the room slowly, making eye contact with each person who dared to look up. "You don't need a reminder of who I am." She tapped her manicured finger once on the table. "But clearly this company needs a reminder of what I stand for." Nobody said a word. She reached into her case and pulled out a thick file, easily 2 inches tall, labeled in bold, red type. "Internal Audit, Culture and Conduct." The room shifted. Eyes darted. Jordan laid it flat on the table like a gavel. "Inside this file," she said, "are reports from employees across all departments. Reports of bias, disrespect, microaggressions, a culture that says it values diversity, until a black woman in a tailored suit walks through the front door." She let that sit. "In the last 6 months, we've lost 4 promising black women from leadership. 3 LGBTQ+ engineers transferred to competitors. And 1 Latings project manager walked away from a 6-figure offer after what she called a toxic climate dressed up in tech talk." An executive to her left cleared his throat. "Ms. Ellis, if I may." She raised a hand. He stopped immediately. "No, not right now. You'll speak when I say we're ready to hear from you." The same man shifted uncomfortably, then leaned back in his chair, humbled. Jordan continued. "Now, let's talk about the front desk. The first face that represents this company. The gatekeeper." She stared directly at one of the HR directors. She assumed I didn't belong. Loudly, publicly, and none of you stopped her. Another long pause. I wonder, if I had been a white man in a Patagonia vest, would anyone have asked if I was making a delivery? Murmurs. Nobody dared to answer. Jordan leaned back in her chair, folded her hands, and exhaled through her nose. "This isn't about bruised pride. This is about the message we send with every small action, every assumption, every time someone chooses silence over accountability." She turned to the file again and opened it, sliding copies across the table to key department heads. "This is a snapshot of our company culture. Not the one we put on our website, the real one." Pages shuffled. Some glanced down at the data. Quotes from anonymous staff, email excerpts, meeting transcripts, exit interview notes. Someone once told me, she said, you can't fix what you won't face. Today we're facing it. She stood up again, slowly walking around the room. I built Ellis Tech from the ground up. I poured every ounce of myself into this company. And I didn't do that so a receptionist could profile the CEO or so a team of executives could let a culture of exclusion go unchecked while collecting bonuses. Heads lowered. A few looked like they wanted to sink into the floor. Here's what's going to happen, Jordan said, her voice crisp. 1. There will be mandatory bias and equity training, real, intense, not that checkbox stuff, for every employee from the janitor to the board. 2. Department heads will be evaluated not just on performance, but on culture. If your team is toxic, your bonus is gone. If your leadership is harmful, you're gone. 3. I am launching a full review of all company-wide hiring, promotion, and retention practices, effective immediately. She paused at the head of the table. Oh, and the front desk. Reassigned. Effective today. Someone dared to whisper. To where? Jordan didn't blink. Somewhere far from the front door. A few suppressed chuckles broke the tension, but only slightly. Then Jordan delivered the final blow. If I don't see a clear roadmap for change in 30 days, departments will begin to shut down. I will not allow Ellis Tech to grow on a rotten foundation. She looked around one more time. Let me remind you, I'm not here to play CEO. I am the CEO. And if I have to rebuild this company brick by brick to make it one that reflects the values I believe in, then so be it. And with that, she sat down, clasped her hands, and nodded. Now, let's get to work. Jordan had founded Ellis Tech from nothing. What started as a simple app coded in her college dorm room turned into a billion-dollar tech empire, built not just on innovation, but on integrity, grit, and a laser focus on creating inclusive spaces. She didn't get here by accepting mediocrity, and she sure wasn't going to let it slide now. As she stood at the head of the table, looking at the boardroom full of executives who were clearly sweating beneath their suits, she let the silence do its work before speaking again. I bought this company, she said firmly, because I believed it had potential. I believed in the technology. I believed in the talent. But more than anything, I believed I could transform the culture, make it something worth being proud of. She picked up a report from the thick folder she had brought in and flipped it open. And yet, what I see here is disappointing. Disrespect at the front desk. Inconsistencies in promotion data. Bias in hiring practices. Anonymous complaints of toxic behavior in management. And the worst part, none of you escalated it. None of you took action. A nervous cough echoed from across the table. Jordan didn't flinch. If you can't treat people with basic decency the moment they walk through the door, she said slowly, then how can I trust you with our customers, our partners, our reputation? One executive, trying to shift blame, finally spoke up. That's just the receptionist. She doesn't represent the whole team. Jordan turned to him with a gaze sharp enough to silence the air. She represents your culture, she said, each word deliberate. And culture doesn't start at the front desk. Culture starts in this room, at this table, with each of you. Silence again. No matter how groundbreaking our technology is, no matter how high our quarterly profits climb, if the people running this company can't recognize dignity, equity, and respect when they see it, then everything we've built is already crumbling beneath us. Jordan's voice remained composed, but there was no mistaking the fire behind it. She wasn't angry. She was disappointed, and that was worse. You know what the receptionist saw when I walked in? She asked, letting her words hang. She saw a black woman with a laptop bag. That's it. No curiosity. No welcome. No attempt to verify anything. Just immediate dismissal. Another executive, an older white man, raised his hand slightly. We could maybe arrange for more training. DI workshops, bias training. Jordan cut him off with a polite but firm smile. Workshops don't change culture. Leadership does. She looked around the room, locking eyes with every executive, one by one. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here to shake the tree and see who's willing to hold on when it gets uncomfortable. Because change is coming. And for some of you, that might mean stepping aside. The tension in the room was thick. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed too loudly. Jordan continued. Tomorrow, I'll be releasing a new internal policy framework. Every department will undergo review. Every leadership role will be reevaluated. Every complaint we've ignored or buried, it's getting dusted off and brought to light. She flipped the folder shut with a soft thud. This company will become what I intended it to be when I signed the acquisition papers. Diverse, bold, fair, and future-facing. If that makes anyone here uncomfortable, you're welcome to pack up your offices tonight. She stood. Meeting adjourned. And with that, Jordan turned and walked out of the room, heels clicking confidently, powerfully, like punctuation marks on a sentence. None of them would ever forget point 6. A decision as made. Jordan stood slowly, her presence commanding, every movement deliberate. The quiet sound of her chair sliding back echoed through the boardroom like a gavel slamming down. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. I'm issuing an immediate audit of every department, every team lead, and every hire made under this current management. The words dropped like stones into still water, small at first, but sending ripples across every executive seated at the table. A few managers sat back in their chairs. Others leaned forward nervously, already anticipating where the spotlight might fall. No one dared speak, yet she turned to her assistant without breaking eye contact with the room. Send HR my list of recommended changes. Effective today. Her assistant nodded and tapped away on a tablet. A voice finally broke through the tension. What kind of changes are we talking about? Asked Tom Brenner, VP of Product. His voice had a forced calm, but the strain around his eyes gave him away. Jordan locked eyes with him, the kind that ensure this never happens again. The room went dead silent. Jordan reached into her leather portfolio and pulled out a slim black tablet. She placed it gently on the table, tapped once, and turned the screen toward them. Let's start with these emails, she said. Forwarded from your own teams. Dismissive language, stereotypes, microaggressions disguised as jokes. Internal complaints swept under the rug. It's all documented. A rustle of discomfort moved across the room. She turned the tablet back around. It's not just about what happened in the lobby. It's about the culture that made it possible in the first place. Someone on the other end of the table cleared their throat, trying to sound brave. With all due respect, Ms. Ellis, a receptionist, isn't a reflection of our entire operation. Jordan's eyes didn't flinch. Is that how little your frontline staff matters to you? Silence. She is the first person clients see. The first voice candidates hear. And in my case, the first line of judgment someone faces when walking through these doors. Her tone sharpened, just enough to slice through the tension. She thought I was lost. Why? Because I'm black? Because I wasn't wearing a lanyard? Because she didn't bother to ask who I was before making assumptions. Another exec tried to interject. We've had very little turnover at reception. That's part of the problem. Jordan cut in. Complacency. No accountability. Comfort in mediocrity. But that ends today. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. But it wasn't a smile of satisfaction. It was one of challenge. You all love to throw around words like diversity, innovation, and disruption. But when the real disruption walks into the building wearing heels and melanin, suddenly the system doesn't know what to do. No one dared breathe. I didn't fly across the country for a PR stunt. I came to clean house. And that's what I'm doing, starting now. She tapped her phone, sent a message, and looked back at the table. Oh, and the receptionist? Jordan added casually. She's already been relieved of duty. HR will handle the rest. Mouths opened. Eyes darted. A few started whispering again. Concern, confusion, maybe even fear. But Jordan didn't pause. She took a step closer to the glass wall behind her, where the city skyline stretched in golden morning light. This company will not fall apart because of change. It will only fall apart if we stay the same. Then she turned back to them and asked the real question. So, who's going to rise with me? And who's going to get out of the way? The challenge was clear. Lines were drawn. She wasn't looking for approval. She was looking for leaders. Her assistant received a ping on her device and passed the tablet to Jordan. She scanned it, nodded, and addressed the room once more. Department audits begin this afternoon. HR will be conducting interviews with every entry-level employee in this building. We're not starting from the top. We're starting from the bottom, because that's where most of you stopped looking. Someone shifted in their seat. Another executive picked up their phone and quickly put it down, afraid to be seen doing anything but listening. And that was when it really sank in. This wasn't just a CEO making changes. This was a reckoning. Jordan Ellis wasn't there to fit into the system. She was there to flip it on its head. Her message wasn't just for that boardroom. It was for every company that thought it could operate on autopilot while preaching inclusion without practicing it. This was what disruption looked like in real life. Not a new app, not a quarterly product launch, but a woman walking into a space that wasn't ready for her and refusing to let it stay that way. And as she walked out of the boardroom that morning, heads turned, not because of her title, but because of her power. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that just walks in and takes back everything. 7. The email that shocked the staff. The boardroom confrontation had barely concluded when every employee at Ellis Tech received an email notification. The subject line was stark and unambiguous. Subject: a culture check from your CEO. The message was brief, but resonated deeply. No matter your title or the desk you sit behind, every person who walks through our doors deserves respect. If that's a problem for you, this might not be the place for you anymore. Jordan Ellis, CEO. The email sent ripples throughout the company. In open-plan offices, whispers gave way to hushed conversations. In virtual chat rooms, messages flew back and forth, speculating on the implications. Some employees felt a surge of hope, believing that long-standing issues were finally being addressed. Others felt a chill, wondering if their past behaviors would come under scrutiny. Jordan's message was a clear declaration. The company's culture was under review, and complacency would no longer be tolerated. The era of overlooking microaggressions and dismissive attitudes was over. A new standard was being set, one that demanded accountability and respect at every level. As the day progressed, the atmosphere within Ellis Tech shifted. Employees began to reflect on their interactions, their biases, and their roles in shaping the company's culture. Team meetings were called to discuss the email's content, and managers emphasized the importance of aligning with the company's renewed values. Staff-based Jordan's decisive communication served as both a wake-up call and a rallying cry. It signaled a transformative moment for Ellis Tech, a commitment to fostering an environment where every individual is valued and respected. 8. A company transformed. The storm that began with a single dismissive comment at the front desk had turned into a tidal wave of change, and at its center stood Jordan Ellis, unwavering and unafraid. The days following her bold intervention weren't quiet. They were thunderous with movement. Jordan wasn't interested in issuing a few warnings and letting things return to business as usual. She had a vision, not just for Ellis Tech's bottom line, but for its soul. And to rebuild that, she knew she had to start from the ground up. The first major step? Bias training. Not a one-time seminar. Not a check-the-box formality. It became a multi-day, immersive experience. Every employee, from junior interns to C-suite executives, was required to attend sessions led by psychologists, sociologists, and civil rights advocates. These weren't just lectures. They were hard conversations, honest assessments, and real accountability. And nobody, not even the highest-ranking VPs, was exempt. Second, diversity in leadership. It wasn't just about having more faces of color in brochures or adding a few titles to LinkedIn pages. Jordan personally reviewed every department structure. She promoted overlooked talent and brought in outside experts from underrepresented backgrounds. The company's leadership table, once painfully uniform, began to reflect the world it served. Within weeks, diversity in the executive suite had tripled. Then came the internal systems. Employee evaluations were completely revamped. Gone were the outdated methods that favored those who played office politics. In their place, anonymous peer reviews regular feedback loops, and promotion criteria that prioritized leadership, empathy, and inclusion. The changes were bold. The reaction? Immediate. Productivity soared. Employees who had once kept their heads down now felt empowered. Team collaborations improved. Communication became clearer, faster, more respectful. Turnover dropped. People who had been considering leaving decided to stay. Exit interviews became rarer, and satisfaction surveys hit all-time highs. People finally felt safe, seen, and valued. Clients noticed. Some even wrote letters to Jordan, praising how interactions with Ellis Tech employees had become warmer, more thoughtful, more efficient. The company's reputation, once quietly marred by whispers of toxic culture, began to shine. And investors, they paid attention. Stock prices climbed steadily. Industry forums buzzed with curiosity. "What's happening at Ellis Tech?" they asked. One journalist summed it up best in a viral op-ed. Jordan Ellis shut down her company for one day. And in doing so, she opened up its future. Her leadership style wasn't fueled by ego or power trips. It was fueled by purpose. She reminded everyone that inclusion isn't a trend. It's a business strategy. It's a human strategy. It's the right strategy. The transformation wasn't just cosmetic. It was cultural. And every day, as employees walked through those now wide-open front doors, they were met not just with smiles, but with respect. Jordan didn't just rebuild a company. She redefined what leadership looks like. A company transformed. Jordan wasn't interested in issuing a few warnings and letting things return to business as usual. She had a vision, not just for Ellis Tech's bottom line, but for its soul. And to rebuild that, she knew she had to start from the ground up. The first major step? Bias training. Not a one-time seminar. Not a check-the-box formality. It became a multi-day, immersive experience. Every employee, from junior interns to C-suite executives, was required to attend sessions led by psychologists, sociologists, and civil rights advocates. These weren't just lectures. They were hard conversations, honest assessments, and real accountability. And nobody, not even the highest-ranking VPs, was exempt. Second, diversity in leadership. It wasn't just about having more faces of color in brochures or adding a few titles to LinkedIn pages. Jordan personally reviewed every department structure. She promoted overlooked talent and brought in outside experts from underrepresented backgrounds. The company's leadership table, once painfully uniform, began to reflect the world it served. Within weeks, diversity in the executive suite had tripled. Then came the internal systems. Employee evaluations were completely revamped. Gone were the outdated methods that favored those who played office politics. In their place, anonymous peer reviews, regular feedback loops, and promotion criteria that prioritized leadership, empathy, and inclusion. The changes were bold. The reaction? Immediate. Productivity soared. Employees who had once kept their heads down now felt empowered. Team collaborations improved. Communication became clearer, faster, more respectful. Turnover dropped. People who had been considering leaving decided to stay. Exit interviews became rarer, and satisfaction surveys hit all-time highs. People finally felt safe, seen, and valued. Clients noticed. Some even wrote letters to Jordan, praising how interactions with Ellis Tech employees had become warmer, more thoughtful, more efficient. The company's reputation, once quietly marred by whispers of toxic culture, began to shine. And investors, they paid attention. Stock prices climbed steadily. Industry forums buzzed with curiosity. "What's happening at Ellis Tech?" they asked. One journalist summed it up best in a viral op-ed. Jordan Ellis shut down her company for one day. And in doing so, she opened up its future. Her leadership style wasn't fueled by ego or power trips. It was fueled by purpose. She reminded everyone that inclusion isn't a trend. It's a business strategy. It's a human strategy. It's the right strategy. The transformation wasn't just cosmetic. It was cultural. And every day, as employees walked through those now wide-open front doors, they were met not just with smiles, but with respect. Jordan didn't just rebuild a company. She redefined what leadership looks like. A company transformed the storm that began with a single dismissive comment at the front desk had turned into a tidal wave of change, and at its center stood Jordan Ellis, unwavering and unafraid. The days following her bold intervention weren't quiet. They were thunderous with movement. Jordan wasn't interested in issuing a few warnings and letting things return to business as usual. She had a vision, not just for Ellis Tech's bottom line, but for its soul. And to rebuild that, she knew she had to start from the ground up. The first major step? Bias training. Not a one-time seminar. Not a check-the-box formality. It became a multi-day, immersive experience. Every employee, from junior interns to C-suite executives, was required to attend sessions led by psychologists, sociologists, and civil rights advocates. These weren't just lectures. They were hard conversations, honest assessments, and real accountability. And nobody, not even the highest-ranking VPs, was exempt. Second, diversity in leadership. It wasn't just about having more faces of color in brochures or adding a few titles to LinkedIn pages. Jordan personally reviewed every department structure. She promoted overlooked talent and brought in outside experts from underrepresented backgrounds. The company's leadership table, once painfully uniform, began to reflect the world it served. Within weeks, diversity in the executive suite had tripled. Then came the internal systems. Employee evaluations were completely revamped. Gone were the outdated methods that favored those who played office politics. In their place, anonymous peer reviews, regular feedback loops, and promotion criteria that prioritized leadership, empathy, and inclusion. The changes were bold. The reaction? Immediate. Productivity soared. Employees who had once kept their heads down now felt empowered. Team collaborations improved. Communication became clearer, faster, more respectful. Turnover dropped. People who had been considering leaving decided to stay. Exit interviews became rarer, and satisfaction surveys hit all-time highs. People finally felt safe, seen, and valued. Clients noticed. Some even wrote letters to Jordan, praising how interactions with Ellis Tech employees had become warmer, more thoughtful, more efficient. The company's reputation, once quietly marred by whispers of toxic culture, began to shine. And investors, they paid attention. Stock prices climbed steadily. Industry forums buzzed with curiosity. "What's happening at Ellis Tech?" they asked. One journalist summed it up best in a viral op-ed. Jordan Ellis shut down her company for one day, and in doing so, she opened up its future. Her leadership style wasn't fueled by ego or power trips. It was fueled by purpose. She reminded everyone that inclusion isn't a trend. It's a business strategy. It's a human strategy. It's the right strategy. The transformation wasn't just cosmetic. It was cultural. And every day, as employees walked through those now wide-open front doors, they were met not just with smiles, but with respect. Jordan didn't just rebuild a company. She redefined what leadership looks like. A company transformed the storm that began with a single dismissive comment at the front desk, had turned into a tidal wave of change, and at its center stood Jordan Ellis, unwavering and unafraid. The days following her bold intervention weren't quiet. They were thunderous with movement. Jordan wasn't interested in issuing a few warnings and letting things return to business as usual. She had a vision, not just for Ellis Tech's bottom line, but for its soul. And to rebuild that, she knew she had to start from the ground up. The first major step? Bias training. Not a one-time seminar. Not a check-the-box formality. It became a multi-day, immersive experience. Every employee, from junior interns to C-suite executives, was required to attend sessions led by psychologists, sociologists, and civil rights advocates.